Namaste World Racer, Sabina and Roger here. Let's watch the ancient teachings of Bhakti Yoga by the amazing YouTube channel Asangoham.
Absolutely love his videos, so stick around if you've never watched them before and be impressed, and then go subscribe and like it and watch more of them, because he delineates spiritual concepts very eloquently, and it's a visual smorgasbord. So I'm looking forward to this on the thumbnail. Who was on the thumbnail? Was it Hanumanji? Hanumanji!
Of course.
The epitome of bhakti, devotion. Yes. Hit that like. Here we go.
There was a man called Majnu who was madly in love with his beloved. Unfortunately, he could not see her. He started to roam about in the forest, believing that if he saw a rose, it would be her. He kissed the trees, thinking they were her. He had transformed everything around him into the body of his beloved. As long as Majnu was alive, he could not see his beloved. When Majnu was brought into the presence of God, he was asked, "O fool, why did you love so much a material worldly object? Had you loved me with a millionth part of the intensity of love which you wasted upon your lady love, I would have made you the archangel of heaven." Majnu answered, "O God, I excuse you for this. But if you had desired to be worshipped, you should have become the object of my love. When the object of love overwhelms one's mind, senses and being to an extent that everything else may be rejected in its face, it is nothing but Bhakti Yoga. Even moksha, heaven or any divinity feels dull when compared to pure unconditional love."
I love it.
Wow.
The Sanskrit word bhakti is derived from the root bhaj, which means to revere, to share, to partake, and to worship, primarily meaning devotion. It encompasses a range of meanings such as attachment to love, faith, and spiritual knowledge. Bhakti is both a process and the result of the union between the bhakt, the worshipper, and the Bhagwan, the worshipped. As a process, bhakti is complete subservience to the divine will. And as an outcome, it is an end in itself. The purpose of devotion is neither wish fulfillment nor any higher purpose such as liberation or salvation. It is a simple concept of unconditional love towards the object of devotion, which may be a theistic God, an impersonal God, a living being, or even a thought or emotion. This love knows no expectations, fears, or rivals. It expects nothing in return and is purely unconditional. The sole purpose of loving is to immerse oneself in an unending stream of divine love. Love does not emerge out of fear. One does not love in order to avoid hell, but rather, in the face of love, concepts of heaven, hell, sin, karma, and liberation are all transcended. One becomes passive in their actions, as there is complete surrender towards the beloved. All actions are guided by intense love. Love of bhakti has no rival. A person who is truly in love will see the object of their love as the highest ideal. It may be that in many cases human love is misdirected and misplaced. However, to the person who loves, the thing they love is always their highest ideal. The ancient treatise on bhakti, the Narada Bhakti Sutra, explains the essence of bhakti in its opening lines. It is of the nature of the highest love for this, and of the nature of the immortal bliss, on attaining which a man becomes perfect immortal and satisfied forever, on gaining which one wants nothing, laments over nothing, hates nothing, delights in nothing, and is never enthusiastic in anything earthly, experiencing which one becomes exhilarated beyond self-control, stands perfectly still, and revels in the self. The notion of love is central to the idea of bhakti. This love is an emotional, intense, and passionate longing for the beloved, not limited to the realms of physical or sexual desire. It involves an intense contemplation, such that the lover and beloved seem to become one. There is an annihilation of separateness, a dissolution of the distinction between me and not me. Unless the union is with the entirety of creation, the distinction will persist. Hence, in bhakti, the beloved is the Supreme itself, the one who is both creator and creation. The identification of self with the Supreme occurs, leading to complete fulfillment, satisfaction, desirelessness, and eternal bliss. This idea of oneness, unity or communion with the Supreme exists in different forms across different cultures and religious traditions. Love is a universal emotion, and its spiritual manifestation is even more so. Modern philosopher Baruch Spinoza described the concept of love as the intellectual love of God. It is the very love by which God loves himself. It constitutes the blessedness of one who possesses it. When such a love dominates one's affective life, one attains serenity and freedom from passion, and that is the mark of wisdom. The Sufi mystics talk about the vision and communion with God. The unconditionality of love is visible in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ for the love of humankind and the compassion for all living beings in Buddhism. Bhakti, while talking about these concepts, filters off the intellectual jargon and presents it in a simple form of surrender to the beloved. The differences in paths often hinder us from seeing the truth for what it is. In his book, The Journey Within, Radhanath Swami quotes the words of an acquaintance. A dog will recognize his master in whatever dress he wears. The master may dress in robes or a suit and tie, or stand naked, but the dog will always know him. If we cannot recognize God, our beloved master, when he appears in a different dress in other religions, then we have much to learn from a dog.
Wow.
Nice. Love that.
We have to learn from a dog.
The forms of worship evolved from sacrificial rituals, Sabianism, and animism from Vedic times to the Upanishadic concept of Brahma, the ultimate reality which is formless and beyond qualities. During the 7th and 8th centuries CE, the practices had devolved. Sections of society, such as women and those belonging to lower castes, were not allowed to worship as per traditional methods. The rituals had become too complicated and expensive, making worship impossible for common people. Local deities and tribal gods gained prominence. It was at this time that the Bhakti movement started in the southern parts of India. It led to integration of various practices, social reform, and reduced emphasis on the ritual aspect of Bhakti. The Nayanars, who worshipped Lord Shiva, and the Alvars, who worshipped Lord Vishnu, started composing and singing hymns while traveling. The tradition spread northward and gave rise to great poet saints in different parts of the subcontinent, spreading the message of love, harmony, and peace. The Bhakti movement not only paved the way for the individual to meet God, but also welcomed all, regardless of their castes, genders, or financial status, hence leading to social change. Integrating various traditions, the Bhakti movement took many forms. The teachings of Bhakti from ancient scriptures such as the Upanishads, Narada Bhakti Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita were combined with traditions of poetry and singing. Great saints emerged during this period, such as Kabir, Guru Nanak, Mirabai, Ravidas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many more. Teachings of Islam were also incorporated, giving rise to Sufism. The Bhakti practices and theoretical aspects had been previously standardized in the Narada Bhakti Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. These aspects were later adopted and modified by Bhakti Yoga saints to suit the general population and adapt to changing times. The goal of Bhakti Yoga is devotion itself. A Bhakt does not care about philosophy and metaphysics. There is no higher purpose of liberation for them. Only love remains. It is the means and the end. This love is absolute and not in relation to hatred. It is spiritual and without expectations. A true Bhakt says, I may know that I am he, yet I will take myself away from him and become different. so that I may enjoy the beloved. Bhakti Yoga is considered the easiest yogic path to master and the most direct method to experience the unity of mind, body and spirit. Whereas Hatha Yoga requires a strong and flexible body, Raja Yoga requires a disciplined and concentrated mind, and Jnana Yoga requires a keen intellect. The only requirement for Bhakti Yoga is an open, loving heart. The Narada Bhakti Sutra talks about the constant remembrance of God in order to perform Bhakti Yoga. Even if God is remembered in action through rituals, in speech through spiritual conversations, or in thought through constant contemplation, Bhakti is incomplete. The 19th verse states, "It is the offering of all acts to Him and feeling the highest pangs of separation on occasions of losing remembrance of Him." The Bhagavad Gita explains that Bhakti is of two types, Saguna Bhakti and Nirguna Bhakti. Saguna means with qualities. So in Saguna Bhakti, God as an object of love has a form. He is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent and benevolent. He has the highest qualities, is kind and compassionate, performs miracles, removes evil, and is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the world. Saguna Bhakti involves complete surrender to God and every action being dedicated to God. All organs, the senses, and the mind performs their functions for the sake of God. Nirguna Bhakti means devoid of qualities. God is seen without any form or attributes. He is immanent and permeates every atom of the universe. God is the truth, good and beautiful. He is the ultimate reality. He is one, infinite, eternal, and indivisible. Surrender in Nirguna Bhakti involves the welfare of others, as all beings are nothing but God. Service to others is seen as a form of worship. In chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Lord Krishna, which type of bhakti is more dear to the Lord, Saguna or Nirguna? Lord Krishna answers, any devotee who fills his mind with my image and worships with his mind centered on me is the great yogi. The distinction is futile when seen in the context of a larger scheme of things. Saguna naturally leads to Nirguna in the process of bhakti. The bhakt realizes that any supreme or ideal quality cannot determine the majesty of God. Any attempt to describe God would limit Him. After this realization, they spend time loving and helping their fellow beings who are manifestations of God. Saguna Bhakti is necessary to reach Nirguna Bhakti because without the object of bhakti, worship would not be possible. Unconditional love cannot exist when there is no definite object to love. Love in bhakti can be expressed in various forms. The famous bhakti period saint Sri Chaitanya once asked his favorite disciple about the forms in which love can be expressed. The disciple said, "Love God as yourself." "This is only superficial. Give me something deeper," said Chaitanya. The disciple said, "Love God as your child." But Chaitanya was not impressed. "This is also superficial," he insisted. The disciple then cited the practice of serving God as servant and the practice of serving God as a friend, but to no avail. "All superficial," said Chaitanya. Finally, it dawned on the disciple, "Love God as your lover. That is the one. It is sweet," said Chaitanya approvingly. The unconditional love of a lover is pure. When the object of love is the Supreme Being, the entire creation becomes beloved. God permeates every existence, and every human being is seen as God, all being equal. There is no discrimination, only compassion for every existence. Just as a lover desires the well-being of the beloved, a devotee desires the well-being of the entire cosmos.
Oh.
The modern world has become very materialistic and consumption-oriented. Everything today has terms and conditions, including our emotions. This has taken away our freedom, and we are bound at all times, in all aspects of our lives, by a transaction. We have to pay for using our senses, speaking our thoughts, or even enjoying the creation of nature. Lives have become much more complicated. Our jobs, relationships, leisure activities, and creativity have all become conditional. Everything is being done in order to achieve something else. everything has become a means to an end. The end is perceived as success, fame, or wealth, but the end never arrives. It again becomes the means. The constant desiring and working for it continues until old age and death. Hence, life is spent with constant cravings, destroyed relationships, and failing health. A person may become rich and successful, but they never really enjoy that success. This gives a dystopian view of the materialistic world. The practice of Bhakti Yoga is capable of curbing desires and making one satisfied with what one has. With Bhakti, no pride remains, as everything is granted by God by His grace. The means itself becomes the end. No longer do you love your partner for the sake of physical intimacy or emotional support. Rather, you love for the sake of loving. You work hard for the joy of working hard and do not get attached to the outcome. You stop seeing supremacy in power and wealth and instead turn towards a fulfilling life. The Holy Bible has described the notion of love that is unconditional and fulfilling. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs.
Beautiful.
Humans have forgotten the essence of being, which is nothing but the emotion of love. Love is seen not only in humans, but also in the animal kingdom. On a spiritual level, even plants, rocks, rivers, and all elements of nature work together to sustain life. It is nothing but the love of the Creator, out of which creation has occurred. We forget this and indulge ourselves in petty conflicts, pride, sensual satisfaction, and greed. We remain in the delusion that our achievements and success are our own. But in reality, everything we know is transient. This realization may induce an existential crisis and lead to despair. The love of the eternal being comes as a savior. The fruit of the love of bhakti is sweet and permanent. The Bhakti period poet Guru Ravidas has given a beautiful composition describing the existential angst which bhakti elevates. It's just a clay puppet, but how it can dance. It looks here, looks there, listens and talks, races off this way and that. It comes on something and it swells with pride. But if fortune fades, it starts to cry. It gets tangled in its lusts, in tastes of mind, word and deed. And then it meets its end and takes some other form. Brother, says Ravidas, the world's a game, a magic show, and I'm in love with the gamester, the magician who makes it go.
Cool. Wow. How you doing? Shed a few tears? Cute. I figured you would, yeah.
Yeah.
That was intense. Yeah, so very, 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 very important teachings in this video, right? So Bhakti, yeah, it's all about this devotion, right? So understanding the unity of the Creator and the creation and maintaining, separation for the purpose of that. So instead of even attaining moksha and total liberation in the higher realms and wanting to reincarnate as this or that or go to the God realms, no, you're just surrendering to love itself, right? Being of service and devotion and worship of the divine itself. So there is no goal other than worship and devotion, right? And then you get into those higher bliss states, automatically just by being simple in that regard. And then the other, yogas, they become part of that, right? If it's meant to. So of course, part of being a bhakti is going to be, studying the scriptures, listening to the teachers and the masters, and having an open heart and an open mind to the teachings and the Lord is going to allow you to comprehend, much better, right? So even your intellect is going to get better and your spiritual practice, whatever that may be, whether you're meditating or not. So you can still be a bhakti and practice, meditation. It could be that you're, focusing on the image of the divine or no image and just practicing a mantra, whatever the practice entails. You're going to be drawn to a more stable meditative mind because there's going to be less things distracting you because you're focused on the Supreme itself at all times. So I see all the yogas, of course, playing together, and this being the most direct and simple path. I also agree with that, right? Even with this, just the rise of like the Hare Krishnas, for example. Yeah, very, very simple. You study the Bhagavad Gita, and whether you branch off into the other texts or not, like the Bhagavad Gita is complete in itself and has enough spiritual wisdom and information in there to serve most people, yeah, very, very exquisitely, to get the sense of who is God, right? And then you just, yeah, practice, right? Chant the mantras. And then when we're talking about, yeah, the different mantras, we got to keep in mind that depending on the tradition and the role and the teachers and what you're drawn to, those mantras within there are going to be labeled as the supreme, most powerful, ultimate, this is the only mantra that works, and da-da-da-da-da. And then another similar tradition will say the same thing about another mantra. So being spiritual, we got to accept and encompass that even though somebody's pointing out the supreme as this is it, so we don't get caught up in that, because we know that the supreme is supreme enough to be the supreme over here as well, even though it's different words are being used and different mantras and different language and different cultures and customs. So I'm glad you mentioned, some of the other greats, right? The Buddha, Jesus, right?
Yeah, beautiful.
So they're practicing in their own way. So, yeah, not to debate, the Buddha and what he taught. There was a definite certain quality of devotion and surrender within him, even going within, right? So call it what you will, but there are these practices. And then, of course, Jesus was, he's pure bhakti as well. So whether he became a bhakti before he realized God, or if he descended right from heaven and was a God-realized master to begin with, you can debate that, but he was definitely teaching bhakti yoga, right? He was teaching surrender, devotion, worship. Love of God is the first new commandment of Jesus. So it's very, very clear. And it's very pure and it's very, very special. We have a few of you that watch us regularly that we could just tell. We know that we have some bhaktis with us, and then just your comments and your support and teaching us and showing us and sharing us with us. Yeah, some of your life is just incredible, right?
Yeah.
So, very cool.
I would love to say something, but nothing comes to mind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, she's in a state.
Yeah, it's I should have known. I should have been a bit prepared maybe for this video. It took like a minute, I think, and I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
Bhakti is the theme of my life, so.
Let me know if I missed it, but I didn't see Hanumanji in the video, though.
That is true. He was, oh my god, he was not mentioned.
But he was on the thumbnail, right?
Yeah. That's interesting.
But anyway, so we can talk about Hanumanji. Of course, when I think of Bhakti Yoga, Hanumanji comes to mind for me the most, because that's all he was about in the Ramayana, was total devotion and surrender onto Lord Ram, and then being of service, right? Yeah. So then we're also knowing that it's not just get into a bhakti state and then having this love for God and then getting into this confined, withdrawn, renounced state. No, the bhaktis are really out there, being of service, right? Understanding that God is in everything, right? So you're going and you're serving God out in the world, right? And Hanumanji was all about, serving Lord Ram, but of course others, and doing your duty, right? Your dharma, right? So that also is bhakti in my mind, right? So practicing, karma yoga as well would tie into that. You're surrendering the fruits to God at all times, and it's so necessary in this modern world, what he mentioned in the video. So true. We got to be, focused. What is our heart's desire? What is best for the world? And then if enough people, do that, raise their level of consciousness into these higher states, that affects the whole field. Remember, everything is one. It's one infinite field of consciousness, right? Some would call that God. So I love the distinction. You got the form and then the non-form. Krishna, of course, taught form is primary, but that leads into understanding that God is supreme, non-form also. It's very obvious, but having an object to focus on is the most helpful, right? You know, and that's true for most people, right? Of course, you get into, you know, non-duality, and non-dualists, for the most part, they're not focusing on a specific object. But if you're on the path of non-duality, then you're, of course, going to be intellectual enough to understand God beyond form, which is also, it's very, very cool, right? So the best part of spirituality in general is understanding all the different paths, how they work together, how they are all meaningful and beneficial. And then you kind of withdraw from what was also stated in this video is love has no hate, right? You're not hating, you're not against anything. You're for truth. So thank you so much. Sabine is in quite a state, so we won't put her on the spot. But thanks so much for joining us for this amazing video in Asangoham. Amazing quality.
Oh, amazing video.
Once again.
Amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. They got amazing videos. So go check them out. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. The whole reason we're watching these spiritual videos is to raise ourselves.
And raise the beautiful world. And I would love to shout out Taj here.
Oh, Taj.
The king of love.
Yeah, Taj the King, one of our greatest and longest supporters. You are, of course, the man. Yeah, we love talking to you monthly, getting caught up, and then just seeing how you're doing on your practice, and then, of course, reflecting that back onto us. You have become a pillar of our journey in our life, and we're so grateful to have you as such a wonderful friend and a companion on the path, so we can practice together.
Exactly. He also serves as a perfect reminder of love.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Unconditional love and devotion.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.